Hey, Ernesto.
Hey, Karen, how are you?
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah,
Super
absolutely.
excited to be here.
Yeah, so Ernesto is one of our top title partners. And so to get started, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into the title industry.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the introduction. I'm Ernesto. I'm all about real estate. So a lot of my clients, anytime they have questions, most of the time I have the answer. I'm 36. I love what I do. I enjoy family time, and I have no kids, so that's why I get to travel a lot when I can. But most of the time I enjoy working and helping closings and getting stuff done. So
yeah, so you have all the answers. The man with the plan.
I try to.
So how long have you been in the title industry now?
I've been in the title industry going on 11 years now.
Wow,
11
over a
years.
decade.
It doesn't feel like it because I just feel like I started maybe last year or so.
Wow, yeah. I feel like real estate is an industry where you're definitely always learning something new.
Oh, absolutely.
Every transaction,
Absolutely.
every file. So what role does a title company actually play in a real estate transaction?
So the title company actually has a very crucial role. Like, we make sure we're the neutral party between realtors, buyers, sellers, lenders, attorneys. We make sure that we do the title report, of course, to check if there's any liens on title, any title issues, any encumbrances that may affect the property. And so we have to make sure that all those items are free and clear, meaning that either the lien gets a payoff, the lien gets released if it's been paid off. We check the survey, the boundaries, making sure that the house is not on a different lot, because that's going to be a huge issue. So we make sure that not only title's clear, that we facilitate the process for all parties. We schedule the closing, we prepare the closing documents, and then when the day comes, you get to see me at the closing table, and that's the best part.
Yeah. So the title company plays a role of like that third-party facilitator from beginning to the end.
To the end, correct. So the moment, the offer gets accepted, the agent would send us the contract to open title. When we open title, we see who the vested owner is. We got to make sure that that vested owner is who is the seller on the contract. And if that differs, we got to see why.
There's a problem.
There's a problem. We need answers. What's going on,
Yeah.
After that, we pull our report. We ask the seller for their information, such as full name, social, dates of birth, because on the title search, there's going to be a few items that might show up, such as judgments, your mortgage, And as a third party, we have to contact the mortgage company to request a payoff statement, because everything gets cleared, paid off at closing.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure that gives a lot of people peace of mind.
Oh, absolutely. We don't like those handshake deals that don't involve the title company because you just never know what you get yourself into.
Yeah, every now and then I come across some old school clients who they love the handshake deals. They don't even want title insurance sometimes. And honestly, it's concerning to me.
It's scary.
Because I've seen some things in my days that I'm like, oh my gosh, you have to have title insurance.
100%.
From your perspective, why is title insurance so important?
It's important because title insurance gives you peace of mind. And I think peace of mind is so valuable.
Priceless. Amen.
You're going to invest so much money into a property, and you got to have that peace of mind that you know what you're purchasing, that you know that you're not going to have an issue post-closing. Let's say that your seller didn't tell you that, hey, I was going through a divorce, or I have 2 more siblings that I didn't tell you about, and then here comes the siblings after you already own the property claiming their interest. If you don't have title insurance, then you're stuck in a lawsuit pretty much.
Oh no.
So it's our job to make sure that we do the search, to make sure that we get all interested parties to sign off on the deed. So we ensure the ownership as well. So not only do we clear title, we create the warranty deed, whether it's with a vendor's lien or if it's a cash deal, just a straight warranty deed, and ensure that that deed gets recorded correctly, containing the legal description, the correct language. So that gives the buyer peace of mind, for sure.
So you've already mentioned some interesting scenarios that can happen in a title transaction. What's some of the craziest stuff that you've seen in,
man.
your 11 years of working in the title industry? What's one of those just crazy things?
So I think that the craziest scenario that I've come across is I had a seller once who he bought lots through a handshake deal, just raw land. He bought the lots, two separate lots, right? And so he didn't get a survey. He just bought the lots from the two neighbors, And so he built a home. And to him, it was going to be an investment property. He built it from the ground up. Beautiful home, beautiful home. But when it came to the title search, his intention was to sell the house on one lot and keep the other lot to build another house.
Another one,
right?
okay.
So his mistake was that because he never surveyed, I guess he just didn't know, he built the house in the middle of both lots.
Oh my God.
And so when it came to closing, I said, hey, listen, we're only insuring this lot, but the house is literally in between both. And so that became a huge issue for him. I felt extremely bad, but the buyer got lucky on that one. I'll tell you, because he built the house. It's not like he's gonna knock it down. He owned both lots. So unfortunately he had to take a loss, and I think that's not what he expected.
Yeah, hopefully he learned from that costly.
Absolutely, and
costly
he's
mistake.
become one of my clients. So after that, he's built so much trust, and
Good for you. Yeah, I'm sure you being just open and upfront and honest with him about the situation.
Of course.
Definitely, he became loyal.
Of
People
course,
appreciate
yeah.
that. So.
And every transaction, it's never the same. There's always a surprise, and hardly the time where there's such a smooth title, smooth transaction. And every transaction is a learning process at the same time. So.
Absolutely. So actually that reminds me, have you ever dealt with any crazy FIRPTA cases before?
Oh, all the time.
Okay, so I have a crazy FIRPTA story. I had a client, her mother owned a property, it got heired to her, but she was a foreigner.
I see.
We went to sell the property and she had to pay a hefty FIRPTA tax. What's the percentage of the FIRPTA tax?
It's 15% of the sales price.
Not the net,
the sales price.
Not the proceeds,
Yes.
but 15% of the sales price. If
So
you're a foreigner, you
correct.
have to pay 15% of the sales price, even if you're not even profiting 15% of the sales price. So this came up during a transaction at closing. The title company hadn't done enough due diligence up until that point. So closing date, we got hit with this big giant surprise. And it was disappointing for both me and my client. Obviously, I felt horrible. Nobody was expecting it. But you know what? Fast forward a couple years later, I was sitting in a CE class renewing my real estate license, and they talked about the FIRPTA exemptions. And I started paying really close attention, and I realized that my client had actually been exempt from paying that 15% FIRPTA tax. So as soon as I got out of that continuing education class, I started making some phone calls, and it took maybe like a month, but she ended up getting a reimbursement check for tens of thousands of dollars, all because I was sitting in that CE class.
I'm so glad that you were there at that moment.
So, okay, always double check if your seller is a foreigner or not. And realtors always go to your continuing education classes. Like, it makes a difference. It really makes a difference.
Know what you're doing.
Yeah.
The contract also has a paragraph that talks about FIRPTA.
Yeah.
And so.
And so does the listing agreement. The listing agreement does too.
And so the buyers are signing it, the sellers are signing it, so they're agreeing to certain FIRPTA requirements.
Implications. Exactly. It's crazy, but it's very relevant these days, especially in Houston.
And that's exactly why the title company is asking for that information in the beginning of the process. So if we get a seller that tells us, I have no social, I have an ITIN, well, there's exceptions if you have an ITIN number, because a lot of our ITIN sellers, they do pay taxes. That's why they got the ITIN number.
Yeah,
that's what
it's a tax-paying identification number. Yeah.
But when we have a seller that has no social security number, or they live in another country and this is just an investment or vacation home,
gets tricky.
That gets a little bit more tricky.
Yeah.
But we do have FIRPTA specialists on standby, so if you ever have questions, I can definitely direct you to the
That's
correct
great.
person.
Yeah, there's a lot more international real estate sales going on now, I feel like. So
Yeah.
that's super helpful for sure.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So what's one good piece of advice that you would give to buyers and sellers throughout the course of a real estate transaction from a title perspective?
Oh, absolutely. So the best advice that I could give a buyer and a seller is do your due diligence. Make sure that you're reading the documents that you're signing. Make sure that you're understanding what you're signing. Because a lot of times I've seen it where a buyer will just sign off on the contract, not really understanding the terms, especially if they're not represented. We get to the closing table and there's stuff that they didn't agree with, such as closing costs, this is not what I was purchasing, things like that, But it's very important that you understand what you're signing. And if you're represented, which I definitely recommend, you always get a realtor, such as Karen, amazing. Have that open communication with your realtor. Set the expectations, And if the title company is requesting things from a seller, such as sensitive information, such as socials, dates of births, it's because we needed to process the transaction. It's very important that that information gets to the title company in a timely manner, because if it doesn't, then that's when delays start to occur. We got to push closing back because now we're waiting for a payoff and the mortgage lender won't release it until 10 business days. So it's very important that you just keep that open communication, and whenever a document's requested, try to get it out to your agent or to the title company in a timely manner.
So one of the things you mentioned is that the title company is like a neutral party. They don't represent the buyer or the seller, but if that's the case, who or how is the title company typically chosen?
So normally the title company is elected by the seller. A lot of times, and it's pretty standard that the seller pays for the owner's title policy, because technically, you're transferring title to a property, and by you paying the owner's title policy as a seller, that's you telling the buyer, hey, I'm selling you good title to this property, And it's pretty standard. On most contracts, you see the seller paying for the owner's title policy, but keep in mind, it's negotiable. So every time you go under contract, it's either seller pays for it, buyer decides to pay all closing costs, or go 50-50, split it in half.
Yeah.
But normally the seller is the one who elects the title company, and that's where the transaction would go and close. So.
Yeah. Every now and then when I see the buyer pay for the title insurance policy, sometimes then the buyer will have the option to choose, since they're paying for the title insurance.
Well, during COVID times, I saw a lot of that, buyers paying for the owner's title policy because it was a seller's market.
Yeah.
And, everything was for the advantage of the sellers, over asking prices, buyers paying non-usual closing costs, and I saw that a lot. So again, it's all negotiating at that point.
That's right. Everything's negotiable, and that's a good way to strengthen your offer without having to increase your sales price,
Yeah.
or if you've already increased your sales price, then maybe you can go in and pay for the title insurance that's usually covered by the seller, and
Correct.
that will make your offer look, stronger.
Exactly,
So,
yeah.
awesome. So we talked about the importance of title insurance. Can you name an instance where a client or where y'all have actually had to exercise filing a claim on that actual title insurance that y'all provide?
Absolutely. So if we fail, humans make errors, right? Maybe during an exam there was a lien that was missed, or an interest that was missed that was not reflected on the title work. We can miss it. We could miss it, and that's why at closing we always try to ask a little bit more to the seller, just in case.
Right.
Because I need reassurance that the work that we did is accurate, and hearing it from the seller is where I get all that information. So there's been instances where, we didn't have a real honest seller, and they had inherited the property. They inherited the property from their parents. They failed to tell us that there were more siblings, And so as a title company, when there's a deceased party on title, we have to create an affidavit of heirship where, we send the questionnaire over to the seller, and on that questionnaire we ask, okay, how are you related to the owners on title? since when do you know them? For how long do you know them? Do you know their marital history? Do they have any kids? You know, are the kids still alive?
So you got to go down the family tree.
Yes, we go down the family tree. On top of that, we require 2 witnesses to attest that the information that they're providing is accurate, right? And so, you know, on this particular transaction, they failed to mention the other siblings.
Oh no.
You know, it was just 2 more siblings.
Oh no.
You know?
So how did that come to light? How did that surface?
So months after closing, post-closing, the siblings found out that the property got sold, you know, because I guess they were in town and they said, hey, what's going on with the house? Whose car is that? That's probably how it got started, you know.
Oh my gosh.
So when that happened, you know, they went to the house, they found out it got sold. And of course, the buyer provided the lost interested party with the title company information. So it's our job to ensure the title is clear from every aspect. If we fail, if something gets missed, you know, we had to make sure that we covered their interest. So we had to pay the lost interest,
Wow.
the party, you know. And so that's just one scenario. And like you said earlier, it happens very, very rarely, you know. And, you know, that's why we have, you know, very unique processes, very detailed. We ask a lot of questions when it comes to files with, you know, deceased parties on title. So, you know, that's just one of the scenarios that I've come across.
That's crazy, but
But
thanks for
thankfully,
sharing.
it hasn't been many, so I'm very proud to say that.
So the title insurance, like let's say each one of them was owed $50K, right, of proceeds. Instead of like y'all going back to the original seller who lied and saying, hey, we need this, y'all had to pay it out.
Correct. So at that point, that
That's
seller stopped
crazy.
cooperating with us.
Right,
you
because
know?
they lied in the first place. Why would they cooperate?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not
The
the buyer's
tea.
fault that the seller stopped cooperating with the title company. At the end of the day,
It was on y'all.
it's really on us
So
because
y'all
we,
take responsibility
correct.
at that point.
But at the same time, you know, we did go after that seller.
seller,
we did
right.
pursue legal
Ramifications
action and all that.
things like
so,
that.
You know?
Yeah. So what is the actual cost of title insurance here in Texas?
So the title insurance, there's a special equation calculator that, you know, exists. And so it's a certain percentage of the sales price. You know,
Okay.
so depending on how much the sales price is, that'll determine the cost of the owner's title policy. And these fees are regulated by Texas. So whether you close with me at Capital or any other title company, that fee for the owner's title policy is going to be the same to the penny. The only
Okay.
fees that differ would be like the cosmetic fees, such as escrow fees, tax certs. Every title company has different fees when it comes to that.
Okay, but most of those state-regulated fees are going to be the same across
Yes,
the board?
across the board, unless the state changes the laws and changes the rates. So.
Okay. So we've talked about title insurance quite a bit and why it's so important, right? Let's say I bought a property a couple years ago without title insurance, and fast forward to today, I'm starting to get like some notices in the mail saying that taxes are owed from a couple of years ago. How would I go about doing something like that if I purchased a property and I didn't have title insurance?
So in that scenario, I really wish there was a time machine so you go back and get title insurance, because it's really important. But in this scenario, you know, you purchased the property already. You became the legal owner of the property. And so if you go back to the seller and try to, you know, fix the issue, saying, hey, you know, I bought this property from you, but there were still taxes that were due that you didn't tell me about. A lot of times that doesn't work, because the seller's gonna say, you know what, it's a done deal.
Right.
You know, we shook our hands, you own the house, that's
It's
your
your problem.
Yeah. And so technically, you bought the problem too.
Wow.
So in order for you to avoid losing the property from a tax sale, because, you know, the county's gonna want that payment regardless. They're gonna get their money, whether it's you pay it or the property gets sold at a tax auction.
Wow.
So unfortunately, if you don't have title insurance,
You're out of
there's
luck.
nothing, you're out of luck. There's nothing that covers that.
Always get title insurance, friends.
Always. Yes.
So Ernesto, what would you say is the favorite part of your job?
My favorite part of doing what I do is just being part of that moment where the buyer or the seller is taking the next step, buying their first home, closing on their dream home for themselves. It's an accomplishment for them. And if I can be part of that and facilitate the process, I love doing closings. When I do my closings, I try to be as thorough as possible so that the consumer understands what they're signing. And I want to say 99% of the time, all of my closings, my client leaves understanding what they signed, what to expect, what to do post-closing. So it's honestly, it's a good feeling just being able to be there, be part of your process as well, and just get the transaction sealed and closed.
Yeah, that's awesome. A lot more goes into a closing than what people think, honestly. And even like you mentioned, post-closing, whether you're a buyer or a seller,
Correct.
there's still tons of little line items that you want to make sure you get squared away. I'm really curious to know, you probably work with a ton of realtors and mortgage lenders.
I do.
What would you say is your biggest realtor pet peeve?
To be honest with you,
That's what we want. We want a real answer from you.
my biggest pet peeve is when I see a signature line of a realtor or a lender with an old picture. Like an old picture.
An old headshot.
An old headshot, that's
Yes.
right. And then I finally get to meet the agent, and I'm honestly looking for someone else because that picture's been on that signature or that headshot has been there for 10 plus years, I want to
Wow.
say.
That's
so that's like my
hilarious.
biggest pet peeve because it's
Yeah, I always say you need to update like your headshot or your profile picture
Yeah.
like at least once a year.
exactly.
Because, you look in the mirror, you see yourself every day, you feel like you look the same, day to day. But over the course of every year, you do, look different, and you want to have an accurate
Yes,
representation
exactly.
of yourself on all your marketing and things like that.
100%.
So, yeah, oh my gosh, I couldn't agree more. I'm a big advocate for like updating your headshots and your profile
Very
pictures.
important.
That's
very
hilarious.
important. So every time I come across that, I'm like, oh, I hate that, but I understand.
I was so nervous your pet peeve was going to be something that like I do. I was going to be like, ah!
You're one of my favorite
Yeah.
agents, and,
Aw,
and you
thank
know
you.
what you're doing. So
You're so
anytime I get a
sweet.
contract from you, I know it's going to be a smooth transaction.
Oh,
so.
thank you. We do our best. Sometimes things can get a little rocky, a little crazy, especially if stuff comes up on title,
Of
right?
course,
and we have to
yeah.
work together as a team to get
Absolutely.
it cleared out. But yeah, we appreciate you guys so much.
So I know you've been in the industry for years, and I wanted to ask you, what is it that you look for in a title company? What differentiates one from another, as in your expectations?
So first, I definitely look for strong communication in a title company. I really don't want to have to be following up on, did you receive this? Did you receive that? Did you order this? Did you order that? I'm a big proponent of proactive communication. So I love that when it comes to y'all's title company. That's super helpful. And also, I deal with all sorts of real estate transactions, investors, construction, I mean, you name it, heirs, you name it,
Yes.
I've done it, and I probably still have so many more
More to do,
transactions
that's
to do and things to learn. But it really helps to have a great title company who does understand, the subject to the loan wraps, the
Yep.
loan assumptions, the heirship affidavit, all those things that sometimes we have to handle and we have to handle quickly.
Exactly.
And things like that come up in title all the time. And if you don't have a good title company who knows how to handle those things correctly,
That's the key word right there.
Exactly. That's the key, because you have something on the title that doesn't get recorded properly with the county, or something that's incorrect on a deed. It's hard to go back and fix it and to comb through any errors and things
Exactly.
like that once they're recorded. So definitely a title company that has some experience with some of that heavy lifting is super helpful.
Absolutely, and that's my goal for every transaction. It's the moment you send me the contract, I want you out there getting listings, selling. Let me take care of title.
Yeah,
and
love
that's
that.
my goal for every file I touch.
Well, I love that we can always expect like 5-star service whenever we work with you and your team at Capital Title.
I appreciate that,
Yeah.
and we try our best, and And we're always going to be here to support you and your business and your clients for anything you need.
Thank you. So how can people get in touch with you? You know, whether it's realtors out there that are looking for a great title company to work with, or just maybe clients or consumers that have title questions, how can people get in touch with you?
Absolutely. You can find me on Facebook, Ernesto Garcia, on Instagram. I'm with Capital Title. My team email is teamernesto@ctot.com. And just shoot me over a message and email. Even if you have a title question or just a concern, or if you have a contract, I'm ready to help you. So
Awesome. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank
you
you,
so
Karen.
much. Yeah.
Thank you.